The year is 1941. The vast, unforgiving sands of North Africa are about to become the stage for one of World War II's most legendary commanders. But before he became the Desert Fox, he was just a German general on a mission to save an ally from total collapse. This is the story of Erwin Rommel's arrival in Africa and how a fateful British decision would set the stage for a desert war that would captivate the world. Let's set the scene. In late 1940 and early 1941, Britain's Western Desert Force had delivered a stunning blow to Mussolini's army in North Africa. Operation Compass, as it was called, had been a resounding success. The British had advanced over 500 miles, captured more than 130,000 Italian prisoners, and seized vast quantities of equipment. The Italian 10th Army was effectively destroyed, and their North African empire was teetering on the brink of disaster. It looked like the British might just sweep the Italians out of Libya entirely, but war is never that simple. Two major events were about to dramatically change the course of the North African campaign. One was happening in Berlin, the other in London. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler was watching his allies' humiliation with growing concern. He couldn't afford to let Italy, a key Axis partner, be completely defeated in North Africa. The loss of Libya would be a huge blow to Axis prestige and could threaten the stability of Mussolini's regime. More pragmatically, a British-controlled North African coast would pose a direct threat to the soft underbelly of Europe. So Hitler decided to intervene. He initiated Operation Sonnenblume, or Operation Sunflower, a plan to send a small German blocking force to Libya to support the Italians. The man chosen to lead this mission, a 49-year-old general named Erwin Rommel. Rommel was already a rising star. He had distinguished himself in World War I, earning the prestigious Pour le Mérite, and had recently led the 7th Panzer Division with breathtaking speed and audacity during the invasion of France. He was known for his aggressive tactics, his willingness to lead from the front, and his knack for seizing the initiative. On February 6, 1941, he was summoned to Hitler's headquarters. His orders were clear: go to Libya, stabilize the front, and prevent the British from taking Tripoli, the capital of Italian Libya. He was given command of what would soon be known as the Deutsches Afrikakorps, or the German Afrika Korps. On February 11th, Rommel's journey to the desert began. His first stop was not Africa, but Rome. He needed to coordinate with the Italian High Command, TIA. Comando Supremo. The Italians were understandably demoralized, and their initial plans were purely defensive, centered on holding a line far back, close to Tripoli itself. Rommel immediately disagreed. He believed in a forward defense, pushing his forces as far east as possible to meet the British head-on and keep them away from the vital port of Tripoli. This was classic Rommel. He wasn't there to simply sit and defend. He was there to fight. He pressed his case with the Italians, and thanks to his forceful personality and the weight of German authority, he got them to agree to his more aggressive posture. He even had a run-in with the commander of the German Air Force units in the region, Hans Geisler. Rommel wanted Allied shipping in the port of Benghazi bombed to disrupt their supply lines. Geisler refused, citing other priorities, but Rommel was not a man to be easily deterred. He used his direct line to Hitler to overrule Geisler, a move that showcased his political savvy and his ruthless determination. Finally, on February 12, 1941, Rommel boarded a plane and flew across the Mediterranean. As he looked down at the turquoise water giving way to the pale, endless expanse of the Libyan coast, he was heading into a theater of war, completely alien to the green fields of Europe. He landed in Tripoli to a scene of chaos and despair. The remaining Italian forces were battered and had lost all confidence, but Rommel's arrival was like an electric shock. He immediately began projecting an aura of confidence and action. Now, let's switch our focus back to the British. At the very moment Rommel was stepping onto African soil, the British were making a decision that would play directly into his hands. After their spectacular victory in Operation Compass, you would think they would press their advantage. But Churchill and the British High Command in Cairo had a new, more pressing concern: Greece. In October 1940, Italy had invaded Greece, expecting an easy victory. Instead, the Greeks had fought back fiercely and pushed the Italians into a stalemate in Albania. Now, in early 1941, German forces were massing in Romania and Bulgaria, poised to invade Greece, to bail out the Italians and secure their southern flank for the upcoming invasion of the Soviet Union. Britain had promised to support Greece. Churchill, in particular, felt a strong political and moral obligation to help one of the few remaining small nations standing up to Axis aggression. Furthermore, there was a strategic fear that if Germany occupied Greece, their air force could threaten the Royal Navy's dominance in the eastern Mediterranean and the crucial Suez Canal. A change in the Greek government, with a new prime minister more open to British aid, sealed the deal. The decision was made. The experienced, battle-hardened troops, who had just crushed the Italians, would be pulled out of North Africa and sent on a risky expedition to Greece. This included the 6th Australian Division, the New Zealand Division, and a significant portion of the 7th Armoured Division, the famous Desert Rats. What was left behind to guard the newly conquered territory of Cyrenaica was a shadow of the former force. The command was handed over to Lieutenant General Philip Ney. His forces consisted of the newly arrived and incomplete 2nd Armored Division, whose tanks were mostly worn-out veterans from the previous campaign and were in desperate need of overhaul. He also had the 9th Australian Division, which was under strength and still in training, and an Indian Motor Brigade. These units were not only poorly equipped and inexperienced, but they were also thinly spread out across a vast and difficult-to-defend territory. The British leadership in Cairo, including General Archibald Wavell, were aware of the risk, but gambled that the Germans wouldn't be able to launch a major offensive before May at the earliest. They assumed the Italians were a spent force and that the small German contingent was purely for defensive purposes. They had critically underestimated their new opponent. Back in Tripoli, Rommel wasn't waiting for an invitation. He took one look at the demoralized Italian troops and essentially assumed de facto command over them, integrating them into his plans. He was a whirlwind of activity, constantly driving to the front, assessing the situation for himself, and issuing a rapid stream of orders. He was appalled by the defensive mindset he found, and was determined to change it. The very first elements of the Africorps Corps began to arrive in Tripoli's harbor. On February 14, a reconnaissance battalion and an anti-tank battalion. They were paraded through the streets of Tripoli to boost Italian morale and deceive British intelligence about the size of the German force. Rommel even had dummy tanks built out of wood and Volkswagen chassis to create the illusion of a much larger armored force. He didn't waste a single day. While the bulk of his armored units, the 5th Light Division and later the 15th Panzer Division, were still in transit, Rommel decided to act. He knew that initiative in the desert was everything. On February 15th, just 3 days after his arrival, he ordered his reconnaissance units, supported by Italian forces, to push east. Their objective was the area around Sirte and Noflia, a key position on the coastal road. This was meant to be a defensive move, establishing a forward screen to detect any British advance. But for Rommel, defense was always the prelude to an attack. This reconnaissance in force was also a probe, a way to test the enemy's strength and resolve. By February 24th, the first skirmish of the new campaign occurred when a German patrol clashed with a British one near El Agheila. The Desert Fox had drawn first blood. By early March, Rommel had pushed his forward screen all the way to the arch at El Agheila, the gateway to Syria. The British, weakened and overstretched, offered little resistance, pulling back as the German-Italian forces advanced. In London and Cairo, the thinking was still that this was just the Germans establishing a defensive line. No one believed they were capable of a major offensive so soon. But they didn't know Rommel. He could see the weakness in front of him. He could sense the opportunity. He had a handful of troops, limited supplies, and direct orders from both Berlin and Rome not to start a major offensive. But rules and orders were often just suggestions to a commander like Rommel. Kahe was standing on the edge of the vast Kyrenakan bulge, looking east. The weakened British were laid out before him, and the temptation was just too great. The stage was set for Rommel's first lightning blitzkrieg in the desert, a campaign that would stun the British, create a legend, and turn the war in North Africa on its head. The Great Desert Duel was about to begin. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of history interesting, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into military history, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Let us know in the comments what you think about Britain's decision to prioritize Greece. Was it a noble sacrifice or a strategic blunder? We'd love to hear your thoughts. See you in the next video.